Welcome to this week's episode of Fill in the Blank podcast. I'm Ross Strader, and I'm joined by my co-host, Keith Abels. And this is a weekly discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. And we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us at fitbpodcast@gmail.com, or you can find us on Twitter. We hashtag on Twitter with hashtag AskFITB. That's a place to join the conversation. We'll see those and interact with you. We'd love to do that. Keith, tell us about Patreon, and then tell us you just most recently became an international podcaster, didn't you?
Well, we did.
No, worldwide phenomenon on the podcast, I think. Isn't that right? Isn't that what it said in the stats?
We do have some news. First off, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/FITB. This is a way for you to support us on your terms. We appreciate all of our sponsors. I like to call them our bosses that allow us to do what we do. So thank you to our supporters.
We need some more bosses.
We do. We could use some more. So if you are able, we certainly would appreciate the support. Patreon.com/FITB. And you may be wondering, well, what does he mean, international phenomenon? I'm not sure exactly what you said, but something like that. Well, hey, guess what? We are big in Japan, sir. So our audience is growing. We've had a steadily growing audience here in the United States, and we have listeners in places we were not aware of, which is fantastic. And adding to that list this week is Japan. So previously we discovered we had listeners in Germany. We then added ourselves to Spotify, which has a worldwide following. And now we have listeners in Japan. So whoever you are in Japan listening to us, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It blew my mind when I saw that. And it's really a cool feeling that we have technology today that allows just two guys like us to chat once a week, and people all over the world want to listen to us.
Absolutely. And if you're not in the South or Central United States, shoot us an email at fitbpodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know where you're from and how you found the show. All right, Keith, so we are today, as we continue our conversation about how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow, what we want to do today in this show is we want to look forward to 2018 and the kinds of things that we're excited about seeing, and maybe things we have a pretty good idea that we might see this year in technology, as well as there are some things on here that, man, if we were kings for the day, these would be the things we would decree. So we want to talk about those. But before we get necessarily into technology, you're looking forward to the year. Are you a guy, you make New Year's resolutions?
Well, I don't really make resolutions specifically. I will tell you the thing that I've been working on just steadily over the last couple of years. And so you could call it an ongoing resolution.
Okay.
And my goal is every year to own less stuff. So, for example, if I get a new t-shirt, we have a t-shirt rule in my house because for years I've had a t-shirt problem. And so the rule in our house had to become, if I get a new t-shirt, I have to get rid of a t-shirt. It's the +1, -1. One in, one out. All
yeah,
right?
that's a great rule.
And so I've started applying that to pretty much everything. And what I've learned is it teaches you to value the things that you are going to buy differently. So if you were to buy a new shirt, for example, not a t-shirt, but let's just say you're going to buy a new dress shirt. If you know you have to give one up, the question becomes not, do I like this shirt? It is, do I like this shirt more than one of these other shirts that I'm willing to give up? What am I willing to give up in order to get this? And if you start really looking at your purchases that way, then you really do curb the amount of things that you buy, right? You cut down on that a little bit because now it's not just getting something new, which is that little dopamine hit that your brain gets, right? That makes you feel good.
Yeah, that's right.
You actually have to go through the exercise of giving something up. And so I've tried to do that as much as I can. It's not perfect, but that helps me with my overall kind of just reducing the amount of stuff that I own. And for anybody that knows me, they know I'm a little bit of a tiny house fan, and I don't think that my family would ever live in a tiny house, but I do certainly think we could live in a much smaller house, and that's my goal at some point, is to build our little custom house that I can design from the ground up with the way we live in mind, and make it super efficient. And I just, unlike almost every other house, not in the design of it, but just in the way that we use the space. And I really hope that that's a trend that catches on. Not necessarily just the super tiny houses that you see on TV shows; those aren't practical for a lot of people. But the deeper lesson there is you can certainly live your life with a lot less stuff. So that's my ongoing kind of resolution, is to end this year with less stuff than I started with.
I think that's a great resolution, or at least a great philosophy to which to live. I mean, because as we talk about technology, the reality is, technology, I think the heart of technology is as the heart of any, invention of the things that we create. There's a sense in which we create stuff because we want life to be simpler, or we want life to be more efficient, or to do more with the time we have. But, like all of us, it's so easy that technology becomes the clutter in our life rather than that it kind of strips away some of the other stuff we don't need. So, man, I think that's a perfect simplicity, less stuff. I think that's a great way to look at it.
Well, how about you? Do you have anything on your to-do list for the year?
Well, this year, so I love to read, and I realized this last year got away from me, and I'd had no intentionality about reading. It's always just something I've done. But this last year I look back and I consumed much more media, Netflix shows and movies and things like that, and really fell out of the discipline of reading. So this year, I don't know if it's a resolution or if it's, I just really want to be intentional about, hey, I'd love to, I've got a list of books I want to read, and reading breeds reading for me. So usually, I'll read something and it, turns me on to something else. And so I really want to limit the amount of media I consume, particularly in the evenings, and really spend more time reading. That's much better for my stress level, the clutter of my mind. So that would be it. Yeah, reading.
Well, so I just said consume less stuff, and you said read more. Those are two pretty good ones. It makes it sound like we're halfway decent human beings. Hopefully we are. Hopefully we are successful with our
not only international podcast stars, but well on the way to sainthood, Keith. Yeah. Well, enough of that. Let's get into. So we are looking forward to some things this year with relation to technology specifically, and so I want to talk about that. One of the things we were talking about it and thought, maybe we'd make different lists, but the reality is our lists kind of look the same. I think as we look forward to this year, there are some things that I think are real possibilities that may end up happening towards the end of the year. We'll probably see some things leaked about it or mused about it in the tech news. And one of those is relation to the iPad evolution. And so, I know what I mean by that, but as you think about iPad evolution, you think about, what the next iteration. So we've got the iPad Pro, the update in the iOS. This is a fantastic device, not just for the things we read and the things we watch, but also for the things we do, how we can incorporate that into the productivity of our lives. But as you think about iPad evolution, sitting here this time next year, what do you want to see? What do you hope happens next with the iPad?
Well, there's no secret that you and I both have very personal relationships with our iPads. And this is the device that I use more than any other device, hands down. And I'm kind of hoping that this next iteration of the iPad follows what we saw this year with the iPhone 10. So larger screen, but same enclosure size, right? So the iPhone 10 brought you the screen size of the larger iPhone, but in the body or physical shell of the smaller iPhone. And I really like that idea in an iPad. You could still do both sizes, the 10-ish inch and then the almost 13-inch.
Yeah.
I think you could do that for sure. And so getting extra real estate on the screen without the extra footprint of hardware, I think is always a good thing. So I really, if I had on my wish list for the iPad this year, larger screen, same size body.
So you're talking about hardware real estate. You want that to be as efficient as possible. I think I'm totally with you there. As much, unusable space, let's get rid of that. But let me ask you this. So the iOS 11, I've heard you talk about that. That's a game changer for you. That's probably, when they went to iOS 11, I mean, that was a huge step forward in making the iOS environment a true productivity environment. But let me ask you about this. So there's a lot of people that, they talk about, they speculate that maybe Apple will end up merging their desktop platform and their tablet platform sometime in the future and maybe the near future. In fact, I think I read just something the other day. There were some tech folks calling for, hey, the iPad Pro has reached a place of perfection. Apple, we're looking for sort of the MacBook Pro touch. And so, looking at the MacBook Pro and saying, hey, what can be incorporated there? What can you begin to draw onto your desktop environments that work so well on the iPad environment? What's your feeling there about do you see those things merging in the future?
I think so. Apple's been pretty cagey about this particular topic. And the only thing that I've ever heard from them officially is it sounds like they're very hesitant to do this. I mean, there's good reasons why you would not do this. And if you look at desktop class hardware compared to tablet grade hardware, there's still a gap there in what needs to be done, what software needs to run on desktop type architecture. So when I say that, I mean, standard computer, laptop, right. Desktop, non-tablet, I guess is the way to say it. So the way that you refer to iPads and iPhones, Galaxy phones, all those things is they have mobile processors, not desktop processors, right?
Right.
And so we still do have a lot of things, a lot of software that requires desktop class hardware to run. Over time, a lot of that, I think, will be rewritten so that it is optimized for mobile environments, mainly because there are more mobile devices than there are what we would call traditional computing devices, right? So desktops and laptops. And that number will only continue to grow for mobile devices and only continue, I think, to decline. And it will plateau a few times and decline, plateau. But I think at this point, we know where that is headed. So at some point, they're going to have to. What really confuses me a little bit is the introduction of the touch bar on Mac computers.
Yeah. Do you have a touch? Have you upgraded? Do you have a touch bar?
I don't. And, I almost did, but I bought a new computer recently and I just could not bring myself to do it. It did not give me any practical use that I thought day to day to justify the expense, because when you get the touch bar model, you have to go up in kind of everything as well. But most of the time, I'll be honest with you, my laptop is docked, it's closed, it's connected to my giant monitor and keyboard and mouse, and I don't really use it open a lot of times. I maybe use it in traditional like clamshell mode, maybe 10% of the time. 90% of the time, it's closed and I'm just using it through an external display. So that really doesn't do anything for me.
No, because you're not traveling with your laptop as much anymore, and part of that's due to the advance in the iPad. I think a lot of people are probably in that boat. They find themselves when they're mobile, particularly if you're in the Apple environment, when you're mobile, your iPad is sufficient. Mine's sufficient. And so I'm with you. Mine actually stays on my desk most of the time. And so I agree.
Well, I'll tell you this. I was at Starbucks today, and I was working at Starbucks. I had my laptop there because I did need that for one particular thing that I was doing. But I had side by side my MacBook Air, and it's a 13-inch MacBook Air, and next to it was my 12.9-inch iPad Pro, which is basically the same size.
Right.
And as I was working, and I had some notes. Well, shout out to Notability, my app from last week. I had a note open, and I needed to refer to the note for something I was working on my computer, and I wanted the two screens, right? So that I had kind of full screen real estate on both. But when I was interacting with my iPad, I was touching the screen, and when I came back over to my Mac, I just wanted to touch the screen. And I don't think that I am an outlier in that. The more we use touchscreen phones and iPads, and really, quite frankly, almost every Windows computer is a touchscreen computer as well. So the Mac is really kind of the last one that's not touchscreen. So I think just by default, over time, as more and more users demand a touchscreen, they're going to have to do that. And that doesn't mean they could make it a touchscreen without putting iOS on it, but that wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah, right? I think you
have to build it. If it's going to be touchscreen, then it has to be built with that in mind. And that means your touch targets, your icons, how you navigate around has to be accommodated for not a point and click mouse, but a hand, a finger, right? And multi-touch, with two fingers or multi-fingers and those sorts of things. So you can't, I don't think it makes sense to take Mac OS and just make it touch friendly. I think it makes sense to take as much as you can functionality-wise from Mac OS and recode it, rekey it as an iOS-like version of itself. And you already see things, you see similarities in all kinds of things. So, I mean, visually, they're starting to put those two things together to where the way that you kind of interact with your Mac kind of matches up to the way that you would interact with your phone or your tablet. I mean, let's look at the dock on a Mac. Guess what came to iOS 11 for iPad this year? The dock, right? And it looks exactly the same. It operates the same. So that's a very simple example, but it's Mac OS is full of these very simple examples of kind of merging these two worlds. But it's more cosmetic at this point than it is functional. But at some point, I think they have to do it. Even if they don't want to do it, they're going to have to do it.
I agree. Well, so even I use periodically, if I need two screens, sometimes I'll use my iPad Pro as a second screen, and I plug it into my Mac. I use the program Duet, and it works outstanding. And the iPad Pro is a great second screen. But what the advantage is that on the iPad Pro, on that second screen, you do have the touch capability. So you're actually operating the Mac OS desktop. You've got it over there on your iPad screen, and you're able to incorporate touch and use that. Now, it's not perfect, but it could be. The possibilities are absolutely there. And so I think they're going to have to go to a touch screen. Maybe it is a MacBook Pro touch kind of computer, and I think that makes way more sense than the touch bar, which ends up being not terribly functional. I mean, most people that are getting along and using, power users of their laptops are using keystrokes anyways for shortcuts, and so that makes much more sense.
Let me ask you this: all right, just let me go back in time here for just a minute. When the very first Galaxy Note came out, it was the first giant phone.
Yeah,
and people made fun of it like crazy. And I had one. I had the original Galaxy Note, loved it, and there was this thing where you would try to spot one. Like, do you ever see anybody with a Galaxy Note? And over time, you started to see more and more people carrying these larger phones. And well, at first it started off being this comically large two-handed phone for most people. And now it's just the norm, right? You wouldn't give that a second glance. The Apple Watch was kind of like that too. Like, at first it's kind of got this novelty effect to it. And, is this something we think, maybe it's cool, maybe it's not. We haven't decided yet. Do you actually see anybody with those? And now, you see them all over the place. So my question is, how many people do you see with a touch bar MacBook?
No, not very many. And if they have it, and you see it because the kind of charcoal gray, the pewter look of the new ones, and you don't see a lot of those. Most of the Macs that I see anywhere where I live, out in the wild, most of them are the generation previous. And part of it was because those were such great machines. They still are great machines. There wasn't a great hardware need to upgrade, and so they're still going strong, and they're everywhere.
So yeah, and I'm the same way. I see very few. I saw Starbucks is basically an ad for Apple and skinny jeans, right?
Right.
And so
it's the place where we go to feel sorry for everybody that doesn't have an Apple, right? You see the lone guy sitting over there,
one guy with the Windows computer, over in the corner.
Yeah, the bulky HP ugly blue computer. Yeah, I know. I feel sorry for him.
I do too. But when you see nothing but Macs in coffee shops, and I see very few of them with a touch bar.
Yeah, no, there's not. I'm sure there are plenty out there, but I don't. I'm with you. I do not see them near as much as I just see the old Macs, or really the increase in just the last year of people just with iPads.
Yep.
That's really what they've got, are iPads. And so, the screens because the screens are so brilliant, they're so responsive, and most of what you're doing in that environment, you're able to do that if you've got an hour to sit and have a cup of coffee and kill some time between, one thing to the next. It's a great environment to work on. Well, let me ask you this. So I know that you care a great deal about what your screen looks like. And so as you think about, do you think the Retina screen is it? Do you think that's the end of the evolution? Or is Apple going to do something next past the Retina display?
For iPad, you mean?
For the iPad.
I would think so. Now, the OLED screen that they added to the iPhone 10, I believe, do they call it Super Retina? Is that what they call it?
I think they call it Super Retina, but it's the OLED screen, right?
Right. So it's not the backlit panel that you're used to seeing on pretty much every other iOS device to this point. So organic LED or OLED screens allow you to light up each individual pixel. And so that's how you get these awesome colors. That's how you get these really true blacks, because it's not lighting up the screen to produce black. It's the absence of light. And that's how it gets so dark, right? So the black that you see on an OLED screen, whether it's a Galaxy Note or an LG phone or Motorola phone, they look really good. And I would love to see that come to the iPad. And really, if you consider the benefits there, not only do you get these kind of more vivid colors and darker blacks, but you also get battery efficiency out of that because you're not lighting up the entire screen. And considering the iPad is nothing but a giant screen, I would have to think, and unless there's something in how they, with the size of that, maybe the size of that makes the math a little different for battery life. But my initial thought is battery life should be incredible because you've already got a very large battery in your iPad anyway because of the physical real estate you have to work with. But then if you don't have to light up that entire screen, you only light up the pixels that you need to use, then the efficiencies that you gain in battery would be significant on an iPad. So right now we kind of say, all-day battery life. And it's hard to quote numbers because there's so many factors that go into battery life. It's not a good idea to say you will always get 10 hours or 9 hours or whatever because you won't. But what you can say is you should be able to get through an entire work day. Or if we gain some efficiencies here, you can go a couple of days without charging your iPad. And I think that would be a very big deal for a lot of people. I know it would be for me. So having the larger screen that we already talked about would be a nice enhancement, and making that screen OLED would be even better. My fear is we're going to have a $3,000 iPad by the time they get done, because you've already seen what the price increase looks like on an iPhone when you start doing this. What does it look like on an iPad?
Yeah.
So you have to be careful of that, and we'll see what they do.
Well, even if you were just able to have a full work day and then come home in the evening and spend a couple of hours reading or watching a show or catching up on your Flipboard, having the extra battery to be able to finish out, a full day into the evening, then put that thing to charge for the night, and then, man, you're ready to go the next day. That would be helpful. So we're talking about screen. Let's just make the gamut here as we talk about the iPad and what we're looking forward to in this new year. Here on Fill in the Blank. So we talked about the screen. You don't think that the Retina's the end of it. I think you're right. I think we'll have better screens in the future. And I know you use the Smart Keyboard on your iPad. So there are several keyboard options out there. There are a couple of really good ones. You like the Smart Keyboard. My guess is some of it's the efficiency. It's sleek. It doesn't add a lot of weight. But can Apple do better on the keyboard and the pencil and some of the accessories that they've got specifically for the iPad?
I think so. Now, Apple has been getting killed over the last year about their keyboards on their laptops. And they switched the way that they manufacture their keyboards. And one thing is that people don't like change. We know this. And so messing with the keyboard means instantly you're going to get some people that are not happy about that. And so I think that's normal. However, this has been a sustained issue for them that hasn't quite gone away. And so I don't know that they're in the best position to make a dynamic keyboard for any product because of the issues that they've had. That being said, I am a fan in general of the Smart Keyboard for a couple of reasons. Number one, using the Smart Connector, which some third-party keyboards do as well. You don't have to buy the Apple keyboard just to get that. But the Smart Connector that comes on the iPad Pro allows it to just magnetically attach very quickly to the iPad. So you've got your keyboard, it just snaps right on magnetically, which is great. And that the iPad itself powers the keyboard, so you don't have to charge it. My big hang-up with Bluetooth keyboards is that you still have to charge them. Now, granted, most of those keyboards last a pretty long time without having to be charged, but there's still that little nagging thing that they need to be charged. And none of them have a standard connector. You have a micro USB, which at this point, I don't have anything that uses a micro USB. And so that would be one more thing I have to have in my bag to charge the other thing that's in my bag. And, so I'm hesitant to buy another Bluetooth keyboard for that reason. Logitech makes a version or two versions of the keyboard that uses that Smart Connector, which is great. And in that case, I think that would be fine if you like that style keyboard. My ideal keyboard for an iPad would be this. It would connect with the same Smart Connector that the other ones do. So you don't have to charge it. Okay. But the key travel would be more like a normal keyboard. So the Smart Keyboard has the kind of fabric-y material to it, and the keys are completely covered. They kind of need to make it that way, and I know why they make it that way. If you spill something on it, you can kind of wipe it off, and that's great. But the key travel, the key clicky part of it isn't quite there for me. It's a little mushy.
Yeah.
The size of it is great, and you and I have gone back and forth on the smaller iPad Pro versus the larger iPad Pro. One of the reasons I like the larger iPad Pro is the keyboard, to me, is more kind of full size. And I like that size. But it is a little mushy. I want a little more click-clack with my keyboard. The problem with this one is everybody is different. And I don't know that they can make 3 different smart keyboards. One for the person that needs the kind of completely enclosed keyboard like they make now. one for people like me that like a little clicky clack to it, and then one for the old school guys that like the super click clack to it. They're not going to do that. But that would be my ideal. If you could take the Magic keyboard that comes with an iMac and that you can just buy separately, if you could take that keyboard and put it into the Smart Keyboard case, that would be, in my opinion, a perfect iPad Pro keyboard.
Yeah. Well, I like the Smart Keyboard. I'll tell you why. And I used the Logitech initially because it has the extra row of buttons, the top row of buttons, which I always found. I think that's convenient. I was always surprised the Smart Keyboard did not include, kind of a function bar up at the top. But I'll tell you the thing I like about the Smart Keyboard is it does protect the front of your iPad Pro. They're light. They don't add a lot of weight, but they're easy to remove. The Logitech is a case, and so your iPad is kind of trapped in that case. You want to take it out. You want to, just get in the bed and read or something like that. You have to take the case with you. I like being able to easily take the Smart Keyboard, detach it, and be able to just use the iPad all by itself. I live dangerously. I do not put a case on the back of mine. But so I like that. I think it makes it the ideal portable keyboard. But I'm with you. If it had a little better travel, if you got to hear the clicks a little more, and I think they could add a row of functionality on the keyboard itself.
I agree. I think that's a big one, quite frankly, is adding that top row that you're used to having on a keyboard would be kind of a no-brainer for Apple.
It's surprising that it never was there. So, all right. So you've got that, and then you've got the Apple Pencil, which is brilliant and awkward all at the same time. It's bigger. It's longer than a pen. I don't know. So I'd make it shorter. That's the first thing I'd do. I'd shorten it by a full inch.
All right. I'm looking at my pencil here and how I'm holding it. A full inch. Yeah, you could do that. So here's the question. The functionality of the pencil is fantastic. The way you charge it is still weird. It looks like when you stick a pencil in your ear just to be goofy. Have you ever stuck two pencils, one in each ear?
I know.
Just to be dumb?
Yes.
That's what my iPad looks like. I feel like a moron when I do that in public.
It's like your iPad smoking a cigarette. Is really what it looks like.
It is. And not like all cool smoking your cigarette. Like, this is my first cigarette ever.
No, it's like a teenager smoking his first cigarette.
It is just awkward in every way. It is just awkward. And I mean, I like the functionality of it because you don't have to have another charger, and your iPad's basically a giant battery. So it makes sense that it can do that, but man, is it dumb looking. I'm willing to overlook that if they would solve one other big problem about the pencil. Where do you put it? Not to charge it, but just when you carry it.
I don't know.
There's nowhere to put it. There's no natural place in the in the Smart Keyboard case. There is one in that Logitech case.
Yeah, that's right. There is
a little slot for it. And this to me seems to just so obvious. And they don't even make there's no external solution that they sell for this. You can go buy a third-party one. It kind of straps onto your keyboard. I almost bought one of those. I haven't done it yet. Apple makes like a very expensive little leather sleeve for it, but then where do you put that? It doesn't attach to anything. It's like this does not solve a problem. It doesn't.
And those slings are terrible because they mess up the whole, when you're folding your keyboard or you want to do it or you want to fold it back, it messes it up. I'll tell you what I did. I took a $2 mechanical pencil that had a detachable clip on it. It's a silver clip. I took that silver clip off of the $2 mechanical pencil. I put it on my Apple Pencil, and I'm able to clip it into my shirt, or it clips nicely on to the side of the keyboard. But you could build a very low profile clip into it. And I'll tell you this, I think another solution, they should build in some connectors into the side, and then you could charge it from the bottom of your iPad the same way that your Smart Keyboard's powered. You could charge your pencil from the smart connectors. that I think would be a solution.
So the $2 pencil clip.
Yeah, $2
solves this
mechanical
problem.
pencil. It solved my problem. It absolutely solved my problem. In fact, once I put it on there, I can't believe Apple didn't build a low profile clip into the pencil already. And while I'm on it, let me just say, so I had to buy a new pencil. I lost my Apple Pencil, which grieved me. But the first thing I did was throw the cap away because I just lose it. I bought off the internet, bought off Amazon some rubber caps for $3. I got 6 of them, and they stay on brilliantly. The cap on the iPad is just the most frustrating piece of hardware I've ever seen Apple build.
You're talking about the little part that covers the charging port.
Yes. I know it's supposed to magnetically
Where the eraser is supposed to be.
Where the eraser is supposed to be. So if you took that whole thing away, you charged it, with the 3 connectors on the bottom of your iPad, it would solve that whole problem too. And you could actually put an eraser on the end.
I like it. All right. So we need a clip. We need an eraser. We need it to be a little smaller. Other than that, it's perfect. There's
a lot of ways to improve the perfect iPad pencil. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, all right. Well, that's the iPad. I think, fill in the blank, this weekly discussion of how technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. We have high aspirations for iPad. I think of all the things Apple's doing, I think they're firing on all cylinders when it comes to the iPad and its functionality. And so I really look forward to some of the smartest and most creative people in the world, making that even better. So I'm excited where it is, and I really do look forward to how it'll improve. I hope we don't hit a place of diminishing return, where they just become, ridiculous advancements. But I so far it has not been that way. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Can I just point out before we move on?
Yeah.
A great example. You mentioned it. You are using a $2 clip to improve your pencil. That is a great example of the technology of today impacting the world of tomorrow.
Yes. That's exactly right. And
right.
Yeah, so if
I'm going to go buy a mechanical pencil just to rob the clip off of it.
That's it. Throw the pencil away.
Immediately upgrade my Apple Pencil.
That's right. And if you slide it all the way up, there's a silver band up at the top. You slide it all the way up there, it looks like it's seamless. It looks perfect. So I'll send you a screenshot of it. You can post it. We'll put a link to the screenshot of it if you're interested in what it looks like. We'll put it out there on iCloud or Dropbox or something. You can click the link and see the picture of it. All right. So we talked about iPad evolution. I think that's realistic. I think we will see some things that we'll be happy with. I think everybody will be happy with some advances in the future for the iPad. But let me ask you about this. There are some things, if you were to look into kind of your immediate circle, but then let's say enlarge the circle, look into your community, look into your the world that you live in and the world that impacts you. What are some long shot things that you would hope for? I mean, so you're king for the day. Wave your wand. What kinds of things would you change? What kinds of things would you see improve? Where would you invest energy, Keith?
So the iPad discussion we had was about, here's a fairly realistic pick we have for 2018, right? So, we have a pretty good chance of that happening.
Yeah.
This next one is our long shot pick, and this is the longest of long shots, in my cynical opinion. My hope for 2018, Ross, this might have to be pushed back to 2019, is humans regaining their humanity.
That's all, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
I'm willing to go as far as 2019 if we need to make this work. Here's how I would relate it to tech and what this show is about.
Yeah, just a few lines of code, right, would fix all that.
Yeah, exactly. One is social media, and really how companies are using our data and deliberately using that in a way that is, I don't think, overall productive for our society. And that bothers me quite a bit. And there's all kinds of examples. And, so each social media platform has its own kind of logic to it.
Yeah.
Right. So, Facebook is where you go, talk to friends and family. Instagram is where you go share kind of visual representations of what's going on in your world.
Mm-hmm.
Twitter is where, Twitter is kind of the dial tone of the world, right? I mean, that's really just this is it happening in real time. And so those three big platforms are all, to me, they each serve a purpose, and there's value to each of them. And I don't want to take away from the good things that have come from the connectivity of the world and being able to instantly communicate with people all over the place. There's certainly a tangible benefit to that. My issue kind of comes in where if you look at the way that these platforms are easily weaponized to divide us.
Yeah.
That really bothers me. Now, you could say, well, that's not Facebook's fault. That's not Twitter's fault. But even if it's not their fault, it's their responsibility to manage that appropriately so that these tools are being used in a productive manner.
I'm with you. So maybe another way to say it is the reality is, so it is an open forum in many ways, and so you can get on there and you can see your great uncle rant about politics, and it doesn't surprise you, and he's your uncle, and you see him at Christmas, and so that's fine, and so there's always going to be an aspect of that. But maybe even what you're talking about is some transparency of these social media platforms, that they do leverage their influence, and they do it in how their algorithms work. They do it in the things that end up showing up in your feeds. So they very much leverage and influence how we end up seeing the world, even in the midst of an open forum. And so if the social media platforms, if they were more transparent about the leverage they had, and if they aimed that leverage to benefit everybody that was on it, you would hate to think that they were using the algorithms and the tools that lie underneath those platforms. You would hate to think they were doing it to stir up conversation. You would hate to think they were pouring, drops of fuel into fires of controversy or news stories and things like that. I mean, it'd be ideal if they were truly open forums and the platform itself wasn't influencing what we were seeing and reading and how we were thinking. Are you saying something like that?
These are hard problems to solve, and I get that. But just because they're hard doesn't mean we don't try. And there is no perfect solution, but I think there are better solutions. And you mentioned, let's hope they're not deliberately kind of fueling the fire. And I don't believe that they are directly. However, this is kind of like the news only being negative, right? You turn on the news. I mean, I don't watch the news anymore, but for as long as I can remember, watching broadcast news was always 29 minutes of death and destruction and 1 minute of, local sports team shows up at orphanage with toys.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And the reason that was the case is that's what just draws people in. They're drawn to the train wreck. And so I think that on social media, their job is to they optimize for attention. What gets the most eyeballs? What keeps you here longer?
That's a good way to say it.
I need you here longer so that I can make money through advertisements.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Which is it's the exact same thing as television. That is no different. It's all about eyeballs. Mm-hmm. It's all about attention. And because that is what it's optimized for, because that's the way that those companies make money, it's in their best interest to put content in front of you that is going to keep you there. And if you are predisposed to the train wreck, it's just going to keep feeding you stories about train wrecks and death and destruction, or this politician that you hate, or whatever, right? Fill in whatever you want to fill in there. And I don't know that that's good for us.
No, it's not good for us. And so as you talk about humanity regaining its humanity, so some of that is, I think, an internal check on the leverage that tech companies have, and particularly social media companies have. The other responsibility that we have, that responsibility as well. If we find ourselves, you spend an hour in front of the screen scrolling through a Twitter feed, or if you find yourself an hour, looking on Facebook, and if you routinely do that and come away and you're not better in some way because of it, because you were educated about something, or because you got to commiserate with somebody on an opinion or a problem or something like that. If there wasn't some value add, but I think too often it ends up being that which drains our energy, which robs us of joy. So there's a sense in which, as humanity gains its humanity, we've got to be people that turn those things off. We've got to be people that, turn their phones off in the evening and engage with real people in our homes. And sometimes that's the harder thing to do, but it's the better thing to do in the long run, don't you think?
Well, I agree. I mean, I'm certainly not saying that individuals don't have responsibility here, right? Because these companies are making a product that people want. And there's certainly a big part of the conversation that needs to be turned inward.
Yeah.
What is my responsibility here as a user? And you're exactly right. I look at it like this. I look at social media, and even some hardware companies need to be aware of this as well. There certainly is an issue with smartphone addiction, especially with very young minds. That's problematic. And, so this is not just social media companies. I would just open this up to, technology companies in general. Whether you're making hardware or software, you need to be aware of the impact, all the impacts that your technology is having. You can't just look at all the warm and fuzzy stuff that happens. You have to look at all of it. But I would equate this to cigarettes and junk food. Cigarettes have ingredients in them that are deliberately addictive, right? They are designed to make you crave more.
Right.
That is no different than news stories, air quotes, news stories, designed to make you want to read more or stay more engaged with, that particular topic. Junk food is the same way. The stuff they put in a lot of junk food, especially sweet stuff, it makes you crave more sweet stuff. And, this is a fact. And we know in video games, for example, and I'm not an anti-gamer at all, but we know with video games, especially mobile video games, but all video games have a certain element that is designed to keep you in the game. It's about keeping your eyeballs there.
Yeah, keep you engaged, keep you coming back.
The things that we've done kind of as a society to help with that is you can't advertise cigarettes on television, at least in the United States. I don't know what it's like in the rest of the world.
Right.
On the side of every cigarette box is a giant disclaimer, Surgeon General's warning, this may cause blah, blah, blah. Over time, you've seen a pretty significant reduction in the amount of people that smoke.
Yeah, that's right. So our listeners in Germany, Japan, what's going on in your country? How are those things regulated, if at all?
with food, for example, we have to put the ingredients. There's a nutrition label. And there's even more legislation that's proposed on a regular basis that is designed to propose more, or designed to provide more transparency to the consumer of here's what you're putting in your body. And so I don't know what the equivalent is for social networks or for technology in general, but I have to think that we will find our way there at some point so that we have better transparency, which is what you mentioned earlier. But we need more really good data on the impacts of some of these things as well. You can't just say, well, if you look at Facebook too much, your chances of depression are going to skyrocket. I don't know if that's true or not. But so you need to base it in the land of reality here. You have to have some facts to draw upon.
Right.
But we can get those. And I don't know how much these companies are interested or invested in finding those things out so that they can build a better product. And by better, I don't mean more eyeballs and more screen time. I mean, users feel better about using their product.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't believe that is the case right now. I think if you ask most people, do you feel better or worse after you look at Facebook? Actually, this has already been done. There are real studies about this. And Facebook in particular does make people feel worse. People typically do not feel better at the end of a Facebook session, a scroll fest as they're just scrolling through their feed. They do not generally feel better for having done that.
Right. I would totally agree with that. Absolutely.
So why do they do that? Well, it's probably habit for a lot of people. And the same reason you just sit in front of your television and veg out. Right? It's just mind-numbing, entertainment, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So anyway, that to me is a big deal. And whether it's social media or whether it's smartphone addiction, my long shot for this year, and this is a pretty heavy topic, but my long shot for this year is that these companies, in addition to just us as people, spend more time considering the impacts that these platforms or devices have on our overall quality of life.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a right sensitivity, and we see that sensitivity beginning to emerge, beginning to be brought to the surface. I think there's a general concern with thoughtful people about the future of how we consume technology. Let's say it that way, very generally. Is it making us better? Are these more and more increasingly becoming devices where we escape from reality and plug into some pseudo-reality? And so, that's the fodder for great science fiction, great dystopia, great apocalyptic kind of literature. And we would hate to be frogs in a kettle that find ourselves boiling someday in the future. Because, we see it. And in all the great things about the advances and the exponential advances as each year passes in technology, we want to be wide awake as we engage with that. All right, Keith, so that's a great discussion, and certainly one I imagine that we will have an opportunity to visit more in this upcoming year. So it brings us to the last part of our podcast, this final segment. We introduced it a few weeks ago. We were talking about sort of a, how would we talk about, things we were excited about, things we were looking forward to. We've talked about that some in this program, but specifically at the end of our podcast, we want to include a section called Blank Check. That was proposed to us. I think it's a fantastic name. Fill in the blank. So what is your blank check? What are you looking at? What are you excited about? The blank check you'd want to write, the blank check you'd want to fill in for this year.
All right. So I started the show off with the concept of owning less stuff at the end of the year. That's my ongoing resolution.
Yeah.
Well, as you make conscious buying decisions, my pick is tied to buying refurbished equipment when available. So to tie it into our technology show here, most people don't know that you can buy refurbished equipment directly on Apple's website, on Amazon, and there's many other places you can buy really good refurbished equipment. So if you're looking for a new Mac, a new iPhone even, a new iPad, or if you just want to get your hands on an iPod, I think you can still buy refurb iPods on the Apple website. You can get, this is within the last few years worth of equipment, right? So you'll see computers that are anywhere from a few years old to the current versions, and it will tell you, for example, if you want to buy a new MacBook Pro, you go to the refurb section of the Apple web store, or website, and then you can filter it and say, show me the MacBook Pros. It will tell you when that model was originally released. So you know, hey, this is this year's model, this is last year's model, this is 2 years old. And I think that's very helpful. And then it tells you how much off the device is from what was the normal price.
Right.
And so it's a great way to get a new device that is still fully under warranty, has all the support and service that goes along with the default warranty, and you can save a lot of money.
Oh,
So
you absolutely can. And these are not this is not garage sale buys either.
No. These things, they
legitimate.
all look brand new.
Mm-hmm.
They've been, this isn't some guy in his garage, rebuilding Macs and selling them online. This is directly from Apple. And for a while, I don't know if they still do, but for a while, Apple was selling some refurbished stuff through Amazon too. I think when they have an overload on some refurbished equipment, they maybe push it out on Amazon. But I mentioned the Apple Magic Keyboard earlier. So I have the original Magic Keyboard that came with an iMac that I got forever ago. I don't even use the iMac anymore, but I've kept a keyboard. And I really enjoy that keyboard, but it was time for a new one. And there's a newer version of the Apple Magic Keyboard. And I wanted to get one of those. So I'm not allowed to buy anything near the holidays for obvious reasons. So I start making a little list of things that I want/need. And so I put the Apple Magic Keyboard on my list. And I think it's normally $100. You can buy it refurbished on Amazon for $59.
Oh, that's a fantastic deal.
On my list, I said, here's a link, buy it, because I always when I do my list every year, I include the links directly to where you can go buy it.
Of course.
Really, because I want to make sure that, you click directly to the one I wanted. I want to take all the guesswork out for anybody that had to figure something out. But anyway, I even put in parentheses, hey, make sure you get the refurbished one.
Yeah, there you go.
Because, that one already exists. They don't have to make it again. And it kind of fits in with at least mentally, it makes me feel better, if you can buy one of these things that's refurbished. Plus, you can just save a lot of money. So my blank check, which is our segment for our kind of picks of the week, my blank check this week is buy refurbished. And if you're an Apple fan like we are, you can do it, buy those things directly on Apple's website, and you can buy them on Amazon. Now, the caveat to this is you get what you get. Right. So you can't just go custom build a 27-inch iMac. You get whatever models they have available. Now, you don't have to buy one, of course, but the selection changes very frequently. So you can't, if you go look today and say, well, I'll buy that in another month or two. There's no guarantees that particular model will be there in a month or two based on the nature of how refurbished equipment kind of comes to be. But it is a great way to save some money. If you don't know how to get to the refurbished section of the Apple website, here's what you do. If you're interested in, say, an iPad, if you click on the iPad page, so across the top of the Apple website, they've got all their different products, and you click iPad. And then it'll certainly tell you, you'll scroll down, you'll scroll endlessly, and it will go through all the stuff about whatever the current version of the iPad is. If you scroll down to the very bottom, there's a section that says Buy Certified Refurbished. If you can't find that, and the same thing if you're looking for a Mac or an iPhone, at the bottom of each product page, there's a link to the refurbished section. If you can't find that for whatever reason, there's a search feature, and you can just type in refurb and hit enter, and it will take you straight to this little refurb section, and you can go crazy there. It shows you all the devices. They also have refurb accessories too. Oh, Apple Watches are on there. It's a good way to get an Apple Watch at a discount. So it's a great place to go buy discounted Apple equipment that has full warranties on it, and it's still straight from Apple.
Yeah, that's right. And if you still have trouble finding it, shoot us an email at fitbpodcast@gmail.com, and we will provide you a link. We can send you a link and help you out in that direction. Well, my blank check is this. My hope, and it's a little bit different, but my hope this year is to cut the cable. The blank check I would write is a way to cut the cable. And so as the options have increased, right now it's still very piecemeal. We come to the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, how you want to watch, a show that shows up on CBS or NBC or Hulu or Netflix. You are still using multiple apps or multiple websites to go to those. I really have this anticipation that 2018, there is going to be better consolidation of media. And so you'll be able to cut the cable and, or your satellite link. And so you're not, I don't want to mindlessly flip through channels. I want to go right to the media I want to watch when I want to watch it. Although I said I was going to watch less media, I really am going to watch less of it. But I want that delivery system to be a lot easier. And I don't want to pay 4 or 5 different services. I'd like to see all that consolidated much easier.
I think you're right. Now, full disclosure, I do work for a company that has a vested interest in this very topic, but this show is in no way associated with what I do for my day job, and I in no way speak for anybody other than myself on this show. I would say in general, you are right, and the market is going to make this happen because demand is driving it.
Right.
And that's the way you want it to happen, right? You want the market to respond to customer demand. We've kind of crossed the threshold into mobile viewing starting to surpass traditional viewing. And that's not industry insider news there.
Right.
So I'm not sharing any trade secrets here that I'm not supposed to share. So I think you're right. And that should continue to happen. Really, the good news about this particular topic is there's a lot of competition. And competition is good for consumers, plain and simple. And so you should have a decent amount of choices, and you make whatever decision is best for you based on that. Honestly though, I'll tell you, there is so much good content out there that if you ever were just going to mindlessly veg out in front of something, now's the perfect time in history to do it.
I know.
You've got unlimited sources, unlimited bandwidth. You just don't have unlimited time.
That's right. Well, and not just great content, but great content spread out among several different entities. And so it's not like, there was a season when, man, if you were going to watch something with your kids, you were going to watch Disney, because they had the market. They were producing what was quality content, for family viewing. But now you have great content that comes from multiple different sources. And so I think that you're right. The competition is going to drive that. There are several companies, media outlets, several of them are producing outstanding content. All right. Well, so that's a blank check for this week. And if you have ideas about, what's your blank check, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. In fact, we'd love to include it in the show. We'd love to give you a shout out. Let us know what your blank check is. You can reach us at our email address, which is fitbpodcast@gmail.com, or shoot us a note and put it out there on Twitter with a hashtag AskFITB. We'd love to communicate with you out there. And thanks for everybody that has sent emails and is communicating with us on Twitter. We'd love to continue those conversations. Well, Keith, we come to the end of this show, and with that, we conclude this week's discussion of how the technology of today impacts the world of tomorrow. And so I'm Ross, and on behalf of Keith, we'll see you again here next week at Fill in the Blank. Thanks for listening.